Hi, Molly. Welcome to the Ectopic Pregnancy Support Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm really excited to have you. We have a few things to talk about, but first, I want to start out with asking you how old you are and where you're from.
So I'm 33. I'm from the south suburbs of Chicago. I've lived here my whole life. I met my husband when I was in elementary school.
Okay. Oh, hi. Well,
Yeah.
I was going to say high school sweethearts, but elementary school sweethearts.
I know. Yeah, we met in second grade. We actually sat next to each other. And it's funny, once we got engaged later on, my mother-in-law found a picture of us from like a Christmas party in second grade that's hanging on our fridge. So we've known each other for quite some time, going to school together and everything.
That's so sweet. When did you actually officially start to date?
So we were friends in high school, like same friend group, everything like that. And then we started dating right after high school. So we were 18.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, that's so unique nowadays.
Yeah.
Everything's online and you don't have those more old-fashioned stories.
Right. We know a lot about each other's like past and growing up and stuff, since they were so similar, like going to the same schools and friendships and stuff. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's super special. So when did you guys get married and decide to start a family?
So we got married in July of 2020. So COVID,
Yeah.
which I think was just kind of a preview of like the uncertainty in our life and being patient and like the unknown and everything. We had been planning like a really big wedding. I think like it was going to be like well over like 250 people invited. And we ended up still having everything the same as we wanted for the most part. We had to cut it down to 50 people. That was like the restriction at the time. So it ended up working out. The wedding was great, so much fun. We kept it like super intimate with close friends and family. I, wish more people could have been there, of course, but I think it was just perfect for how it all turned out. I couldn't wait a whole nother year to have a wedding and like kind of like put things on hold or anything like that. So not knowing what was to come in our lives, but
Right. There were so many unknowns. Was it a backyard wedding or was it actually at a venue?
It was at a venue. So and the ceremony was outside, and then the reception was at the same place inside. So we just had to make like certain adjustments and things like that. But overall, it was a pretty like standard wedding. So it was great.
Yeah, that's great. I imagine it was so difficult to chop your guest list down.
Yeah, I mean, and we tried to keep it to like people that were obviously comfortable being there. We had a really large bridal party, so that was like the bulk of it. And then just close friends and family, which is kind of what you want at a wedding anyway. So I'm a little biased for like friends that are getting married now. I'm like, you should just have 50 people. But yeah, I think the smaller the better. Just I never thought that would be our case, but it worked out.
Yeah, I love that. Very intimate.
Yeah, definitely.
So 2020, you got married. Did you want to start a family right away?
Not right away. No, we wanted to just enjoy being married. I think it was maybe 2 years later, we looked at buying a house. And that was a whole nother journey because the market at the time was insane. So we put several offers in. We ended up having to move in with my parents for a year to look and save money and stuff. Like it all worked out. But again, it was just like the uncertainty and the struggle of like not being able to find a house. And so now we're in the current house that we're in. I think we moved in 2022, maybe. So again, it worked out, but it just was kind of a struggle at first. And then we enjoyed being in our house for a year. And then we decided that we wanted to start a family. So I believe we started trying in August of 23. I had just gotten off birth control that I was on for forever. And my doctor was like, it'll be fine, just get off birth control and start. So I definitely thought it was going to be I mean, in hindsight, we didn't try for that long before conceiving, I think a couple of months. But at the time, it felt like forever, you know, like my period and everything. It was very upsetting. I just thought it would be a little bit of an easier journey, and then not knowing what was to come later, I was like, I was definitely wrong. But we ended up conceiving I found out in November of 23.
Okay.
So that was the first pregnancy. And it was so exciting, you know, and just like being pregnant for the first time. And I'm just a planner. So, and my husband and I are both teachers. And I was like, oh my God, the due date will be over the summer and it'll be great. And, you know, we didn't tell like friends and family right at first, but we were starting to plan like how we were going to tell them. The holidays were coming up. So we were ordering things, and my husband got me some things for Christmas, like maternity stuff. And we just kind of jumped the gun on things, but it's like, I thought it was going to be a normal pregnancy. So
it's hard not to jump the gun, right? You're so excited and so happy, especially if you're a planner. I'm definitely a planner as well. And you start to think about all those timelines and dreaming of what the nursery is going to look like, thinking of names, whether it's a boy or a girl. And
exactly.
Yeah, it's so hard not to do that.
I have 6 nieces and nephews too. And like, they all had pretty normal pregnancies, for the most part, healthy pregnancies. And, you know, I have friends that have kids and things. So I was just thinking like they did, I'm assuming, you know, thinking that what can go wrong type of thing. And I was wrong. But I want to say it was like, I had just told my husband, and my best friend was waiting to tell family and stuff. But I think it was maybe not even a week of knowing, and I started bleeding. But I wasn't like super worried at the time, because I knew of people that had spotting and bleeding during pregnancy, and it was okay. And it wasn't a lot. So I know they always say like, if it goes through a pad, you know, that should be concerning. And it was not even close to that. So when I called my doctor, they didn't seem too worried. They just said, come in for blood work and we'll test your HCG, which I didn't know the HCG was going to like trigger me for forever.
Right. I mean, at that point, I remember initially thinking, what's an HCG? What, you know, then
you don't know anything about, I mean, I'm still learning things, but it's like, there's just so much we don't know about our own bodies and pregnancy and what's right, what's wrong. And it's just, it was a learning moment for sure.
Huge learning curve.
So I got my HCG tested. It was pretty low. Numbers were in like the low hundreds, I think, but I was also pretty early. And I was going every 48 hours. They say the number should be doubling. And it was increasing, but it was not doubling. And they didn't seem too concerned. They said, oh, sometimes it takes 72 hours to get that true double. I'm like, okay. So I get, you know, more. I don't even remember how many times I got it done. Probably at least 3 like rounds of it. But it was just the same trend. Like it was increasing. And I was just really holding on to hope. I'm like, well, it's like maybe 10 off from, doubling. It's like right there.
Right.
And he said that it should be okay. You know, like they just kind of, not that they were giving me false hope, but they didn't seem too worried about it. So I was trying to be really hopeful. And because I didn't have any other symptoms, my bleeding was very minimum. There was no cramping or anything like that. But I had my ultrasound scheduled, like when I originally called to let them know I was pregnant. And they said, let's just keep that appointment, and that'll be like, in a week or something, and we'll try to see if we can see something on the scan. And, I was Googling things, of course, as we do. We Google everything. And I had seen on Google that if your numbers were increasing but not doubling, something about an ectopic. And I had only known of one other person in my life that had one. And I didn't know much about it. I just knew that she had it a few years ago and that her tube ruptured and it was very sudden and she had surgery. So it seems terrifying, of course, but that's all I knew. Like I didn't know reasoning behind it. I didn't know symptoms. I didn't know really anything.
Right.
So at this point I started to get kind of panicked just because, again, those numbers weren't really doubling. And then my last blood draw before my ultrasound, I was at work. It was on a Friday. And they called and said whatever about the numbers. And I said, is this going to be a viable pregnancy? And she did tell me on the phone, she said, I think that you're miscarrying. And that just really obviously hit me because it was shocking news. But it was also like the fact that she said that on the phone. And I don't think they just give out that information over the phone if they don't really feel something's wrong.
Right.
So, of course, I was very upset. I left work, called my husband, hysterical, like, this is what they, this is what they said, this is what they think. And, it's just, my appointment for my scan was on that Tuesday. So I'm like, oh, let me just enjoy my weekend, I guess. Like, that's just so much waiting for things. And I understand that things can't be like predetermined or anything, but it was just hard to go about like everyday life when you're told that.
It's so hard emotionally because, you get this phone call, you're told that you're potentially miscarrying, then you have a whole weekend.
Yep.
Until Tuesday to almost try and like reverse what you just heard and think, oh, well, maybe it's not a miscarriage.
Right.
Maybe I'm just super early and my numbers still aren't doubling. Yeah. But, exactly. There's so much hope that you still find amidst all of these unknowns that when you do finally get the actual diagnosis, it almost hurts even more because you kept almost tricking your brain that it was going to be okay.
It messes with your mind so much.
Yes.
It's your pregnancy too. So you're like, do these numbers really matter? I don't know. I mean, they say they're supposed to double, but like it's going up, and I seem to be okay. So yeah, you have the people that are around you staying positive as well. Like my husband tried to stay as positive as he could, which is great, but it ended up being what it was. So, and the other hard thing is like people at work and my close friends didn't know I was even pregnant. So here I am leaving in the middle of the work day, and I think I didn't go in on that Monday, but so it's like, hey, I'm pregnant, and they're kind of excited for a moment for me. And then I'm like, but it's not going well, so just not how I envisioned telling people or anything.
No, I remember saying that to a couple close friends as well. Right around when we had our ectopic, we were at some friend gathering and there was like a special margarita mix made, and I was given the drink, and my husband and I just let them know I can't have this. I'm pregnant, but we think it's an ectopic based on the results and things like that. And never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I'd have both of those situations shared in the same breath.
Right. You would think like, oh, I'm at a party and I'm not drinking. I should be celebrating this because I'm not drinking because I'm pregnant and I'm excited about it. Yeah. It's hard. And then you're supposed to kind of almost fake emotions to be at the party or whatever it is. And it's a lot. And thinking back to that, I'm like, that was a lot. And when my appointment came around on Tuesday, I was like, all right, ready for some answers, ready to see what they see on the scan. And they called me saying that whoever was supposed to do the scan was sick. And I was going to have to reschedule. And I was so frustrated because I was like, no. Like, this is what my HCG is like. I'm bleeding. I was told on Friday that I'm possibly miscarrying. Like, I need to come in today. And so I couldn't, I go through a hospital, like a practice within the hospital. And they said, well, you can come to the hospital, but you can go through like the lab that they have or whatever, which was fine. And it's just not as like intimate. Like I don't know those people and they were fine. It's just not what I envisioned doing for my first ultrasound. So I went there And, they can't say anything about what they see or whatever. And I believe I went home, they called me and they said, like, there was a sac forming in the uterus, which I later learned that when you become pregnant, the sac just naturally forms and prepares for the baby. But like, again, I don't know any of these things.
Right.
So it's another like kind of false hope. Like, well, they saw something in the uterus and they said, I want you to come back on Saturday to do another scan to hopefully see a little bit more. So again, it's just more waiting, meanwhile going back to work and whatever. But we went on Saturday, same place because it's a weekend. And we were there for so long and I could just tell that things were wrong because they were like, well, we're going to call your doctor. And, so they weren't quite saying anything, but I just, at that point, I'm just like so exhausted from all of these tests and all of the unknown. I'm like, what's the answer here? And I remember saying something like, if this is an ectopic, like I do know of somebody that has had one and their tube ruptured, not trying to have that, and they understood, but they just didn't know anything for certain. So on that, after that next scan, they called and they said, we need you to come back to the hospital. It is an ectopic pregnancy. And they verified that the baby was in the left tube.
Okay.
So they said, you need to come in and get the methotrexate injection. And again, I never heard of that before. I'm looking that up and I'm like, this is like something they use for people with cancer. Like this seems pretty intense. So, but it's like, we had no time to think about it. We had to go back to the ER. And if you've ever been to the ER, it's like, it's a hot mess. And it's just the wait time was, I think we waited another 5 hours maybe.
Oh my gosh.
And not to undermine what anyone else is going through in the ER, but I was like, I am just so over this, and I think one of the worst parts about going to the ER too is like, I don't know if they're just not reading my chart, but I felt that I got tossed around a lot of people and I had to explain to everyone what was going on. I had to explain how far along I was, what my HCG was, what my symptoms were, what I was told. And I'm like, can y'all just read the chart? Because this is getting really frustrating. Like, I finally got some answers, but it's still taking forever.
Yeah, I've heard that from many women about that same thing. Just always having to constantly rehash their entire journey to different medical professionals. And each time it stings even more than it did.
Why am I explaining this to you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I already don't even know what's going on, really. And, we got more blood work done. The amount of blood work is just insane. And kind of being tossed around and waiting and everything like that. And then finally, after several hours, 2 nurses, doctors came in to give me the injection. And one of them was like very pregnant. And I just looked at my husband and I'm like, is this a joke? Like, and looking back, it's like nothing against that person. That's not her fault by any means. But it's just another added layer of frustration.
Yeah, it's almost like that should be something that you don't even have to think about. Like, if that pregnant woman was clearly aware of what you were going on, she should have had the audacity to just ask someone else to do it.
I would think, and all of the people working the ER, like, we sure were tossed around enough with different people, but it is what it is. But as I was getting the injection, I just remember laying there and just being like so mentally and physically exhausted from it all. Like, it just finally hit me as it was literally happening that, like, this is happening. Like, I'm dissolving the pregnancy, terminating the pregnancy, and I can't believe that this is where we're at. And I remember just crying so much, and my husband was holding my hand. I remember telling him, like, it doesn't hurt. I can't believe this is happening, you know? And it's like, you finally got an answer, but of course it's not the answer that you want. And my next thing was like, when can I start trying again? Like, I think I didn't even have time to really process what happened for my first pregnancy that I was already like, okay, well, we're trying to try again because I'm a planner and this is not going according to plan.
That was exactly my mindset too. Some women, and rightfully so, aren't ready to try right away.
Right.
But I was very much like, when is the first time I can actually start trying in a safe manner? Because, there's that window. And I don't think I was told about that 3-month window.
I wasn't either.
Yeah. I wasn't told until they injected me. They told me this after the fact. And I thought, wow, that's.
Yeah. And then you're like, wow, months of thinking about what I just went through and not being able to try.
Mm-hmm.
And, after I had the injection, they tell you like there's all of these side effects that could possibly happen from the injection and kind of a scary list of things, but I didn't have any of those side effects at first. I was continuing to bleed, but I want to say I bled for another like maybe 5 days or something, and it stopped. I maybe had some minimal cramping, like everything went back to normal. I got more blood work done and everything was trending downward. Like they said, it's going down. And I know I've heard of people who their numbers actually go up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no, everything's going down. Like it should be back to 0, before no time. So I said, okay, great. And then 9 days later, it was actually Christmas Day. My husband and we opened gifts in the morning and we were just waiting for our Christmas party, which was like late afternoon. And we were just sitting on the couch and I just had this crazy unbearable pain and cramping from like my lower abdomen, pelvis area, like through my butt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so painful. I was like, what is this? Like thinking that this was a side effect 9 days later from the injection. Like, I don't know. I just wasn't expecting it at all. I had stopped bleeding. Like, what is this? And my husband was totally freaked out because he saw that I was in so much pain, could not get comfortable. I called my mom. She's like, it sounds like you should go to the hospital. And I'm like, the ER again? Like, I can't, and it's Christmas. So nobody's, doctors are on call and stuff. And finally, my on-call doctor got back to me and said, you need to go to the hospital right now. But didn't tell me, I don't know why I still didn't click with what could have been happening.
Mm-hmm.
I think because it had been so long, what I thought was long since the injection, I thought this was over with,
Yeah.
And I get to the hospital and they did kind of push things along because I was in so much pain. Again, explaining everything that's going on while in pain, doing more tests. I had a transvaginal ultrasound, which normally is not too uncomfortable. It's okay, and for whatever reason, my husband couldn't come with me either. And it was so painful. I was cussing at the ultrasound tech. I'm like, do we really need to do this? And then she said something like, did they get you a bed yet? Did they get you a room yet? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm getting home for Christmas dinner. I don't know what this is. I just was really not. I was like, why would I need a bed?
Yeah.
Can't you just give me something for this pain type of thing? And they give me a bed and they came in and they said, your tube ruptured and you're internally bleeding. We have to have surgery immediately.
Oh my gosh.
And I had never had surgery before. I had oral surgery once. But normally you're able to prepare for your surgery, weeks ahead of time, days ahead of time. And just, I don't know if my husband thinks it was better that I wasn't able to think about it too much. But an on-call doctor came within an hour and they were like, we need to get you into surgery right now. And I was just like, I don't even know if I still have fully processed the fact that all happened. You know?
And you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean? I already got methotrexate.
Exactly.
This is supposed to be working for me.
Yes. And it did the exact opposite.
Oh my gosh.
And now I have all this internal bleeding. And they were taking it very seriously, which of course they should, but it just scared me.
Mhm.
I'm like, well, what do you mean? And they're like, well, if you don't have this could be really fatal. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it was very, very scary. And like, obviously had to, undress, and was laying there and was very cold. My husband had to like go ask if they had a blanket for me. And I wear contacts. And I had to take my contacts out. And I don't know why that was just so like vulnerable for me, because I could not see anything. Of course, I didn't bring my glasses with. I didn't know.
Mhm.
And the doctor came in, and I like could hardly make out her face. And here
Oh.
they're telling me these things that are already so upsetting and confusing, and I can't even see, So it's just like an added layer of confusion.
Mhm.
And it was just so like surreal. And like I just have like, I'm not optimistic when it comes to these things, and luckily everything turned out okay. But I told my husband, I'm like, if that was you that had to have surgery, I would be a hot mess. And he was staying very strong and like making phone calls and stuff, but you could tell he didn't want to be like upset in front of me, because I was just crying hysterically.
Yeah, you were trying the best you could to get through the information you were just given.
Keep it together and like
Yeah.
just get through it. And people were like, wow, like I bet you this wasn't a Christmas you expected. I'm like, oh my God, it's Christmas. Like, I just like,
well, yeah,
that.
Yeah, at that point, you're probably even forgetting what day it is, and forgetting about the Christmas dinner that you were supposed to go to, because you don't know when you're going to have surgery, how long it's going to be, how long you're going to have to be there.
Right. It was
Oh.
just, and everything, was laparoscopic. I think it took an hour and a half. They were great about it. And they came out like right at the end of surgery and talked to my husband, and I have pictures of everything, which is crazy, but it was kind of cool just to see like what was going on in there. And you see the ruptured tube, you see all the blood.
Wow.
And it's like, wow, I can't believe that was actually happening,
How many weeks were you at that point?
I think I was like 9 weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, wow. It was a lot. And even after the surgery though, I kind of went, I was recovering, and I was luckily off of work for a little bit. Not how I wanted to spend my winter break, of course, but I was already in the mindset of like, okay, well, when can we try again? Because, and I hate to say it like this, but I kept saying things like, this was such a waste of my time. Like, here I thought that we would be X amount of weeks pregnant and continuing, and I just don't understand like how or why this happened, and they don't have answers for you, which is frustrating. But I was ready to move on.
Yeah, I would be in that same place if I needed surgery after methotrexate, and just putting myself in your shoes, I probably would have said, this is a waste of time. Why didn't I just get surgery right away?
Right.
Rather than methotrexate? Because I imagine they still told you to wait the 3 months
because of that being in you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, I got it and it didn't even work. If I would have gotten it earlier, would it have worked? I don't know. There's just so many questions about it, but I was like, we need to move on from this, know? So, it was a struggle, and like going back to work and things was a struggle, and having to fill in friends and family. Like, I don't mind talking about everything, obviously, at this point, but like, it's a lot to explain, and ectopics are not nearly as common as like a miscarriage, which is also traumatic in itself, but it's so different. And I realized that when we conceived again in the summertime, so I conceived again and had a miscarriage in July of 24. So that's, 7 months after my ectopic. And just realizing like that was terrible in itself, because now I'm like really in a negative set. Here I've had 2 terrible things happen to me, but they're also so very different.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told that by many people, like by my OB, and like I did end up going to therapy and things. And while she was super helpful, she's like, yeah, those are just two separate things. And like an ectopic is kind of overlooked in the sense of like a loss. It's not, it doesn't count toward like a recurrent miscarriage or anything like that. And sometimes there's not like testing available, or like insurance won't cover the testing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I had multiple miscarriages, maybe that would be the case. So it's really been interesting of like how people don't know much about ectopics or pregnancy loss in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that side of things and the fact that you had a miscarriage too, and the differences. I know I've shared quite a bit on my Instagram account regarding how they're not equal, ectopics and miscarriages. And I have been very vocal about that, because when I would tell friends and family or acquaintances and so on about my ectopic, often the response I would get is, oh, I had a miscarriage too, or I've known someone who's gone through something similar. And not to say that the grief and pain isn't there with the miscarriage, but I think physically you go through something far more with an ectopic.
Right.
It's more serious because your life is threatened.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just appreciate you saying that, since you've had both.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, it was life-threatening with the tube rupturing too. Miscarriages, obviously, if you're a little bit further along, you know, having a DNC and things like that, that could be, I guess, more like traumatizing. And I didn't have to have one. I think I was 6 weeks along with the miscarriage. And again, it was a terrible time in my life. And yeah, not to undermine anyone that has to go through that, because it is awful. But it is more common, unfortunately. And an ectopic, I just feel like they don't, like even doctors seem to sometimes not know enough about it.
Yeah.
And for it to not be like really counted in anything, if that makes sense. Like I was like, well, I lost a baby and I also lost my left tube. So if anything, I feel like this is a bigger loss for me. And I had like just the emotional and physical toll it had to put me through. Like the miscarriage was emotionally terrible, because I think on top of the fact that I had already had an ectopic. This is not my second pregnancy. I was already nervous going into it. You know, I got my HCG tested right away. And it was the same thing. So it's like you start to just get in a really low place thinking this is never going to happen. And they do say that the risk for an ectopic does go up after you've had one. So that, of course, was in the back of my mind. But here I am, like they confirmed that there was a sac in the uterus for this one. And so, you know, you can rule out ectopic, but it's still like, well, it's still not going right. Like, what am I doing wrong? And like, why does this keep happening to me? And when am I going to finally have a moment where I can like relax and breathe? So
yeah, I feel like I've spoken to, and maybe this topic has come up on every episode so far, but pregnancy after an ectopic or pregnancy loss in general is so terrifying. The excitement is ripped away from you, and there's constant worry and fear involved. And sometimes it goes away as the pregnancy goes on, but you know, especially those first 12 weeks, it's so scary because we know anything can happen.
Right. And with my miscarriage, I had no symptoms of a miscarriage. Nothing was wrong besides the HCG. And part of me was like, they do it for a reason. But I was like, if I didn't even get these numbers done, like this is stressing me out. Would I even know what's going on. Like I would just think it was a normal pregnancy, but I didn't start bleeding until, and it was just light spotting until the day before I think I passed my miscarriage.
Wow.
I was able to pass it at home. I went to a wedding the day before, and again, I'm not drinking, and some friends did know, of course, but like, again, it's in my mind, like, well, I'm not drinking, but I also don't think this is going well. So you're trying to be present, you're trying to have fun, and that's in the back of your mind. And then the next day is when the bleeding started to get a lot heavier. And I started to have the pain and the cramping, not nearly as severe as the ruptured tube pain, but I knew that this wasn't just normal cramping. It was still pretty painful. And my ultrasound that I had scheduled was actually the next day. So I was like, I'm not going to the ER for this pain. I'm going to get an ultrasound the next day. But this is what I still called and said, this is what I think is going on. And I just, I ended up using the bathroom, and I think everything had passed, which it was very upsetting, of course. I remember my husband was cooking dinner, and I'm like, okay, come up here and look at this. And I sent a picture to my mom, and I was like, I think this is what this is, and it's such a crazy moment, like thinking back to that, because it's like, what are you supposed to do with that, at the time? And it just was so upsetting, because again, here we finally have an answer. Like, I'm bleeding, and I'm having a miscarriage. But what do I do with this? So we ended up just like having a moment and flushing it down the toilet. And it's just like, when I think about it, it just makes me really upset, because I mean, there's nothing you can really do with it. I've been told, just if it were to happen again, or anyone that has gone through it, like, you can save those things and bring it to the hospital, and they can do testing for possible answers, not for certainty. But I was like, I don't know. It was just such a, like, this is what's happening. Like, our first, was an ectopic, and here we are ending up in the hospital with surgery. And the second one, we're flushing this down the toilet.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. To me, it just was like, I can't get any lower than this at this point,
Yeah. It's such a graphic and traumatizing thing to experience. I vividly remember the exact same visuals as you after my ectopic and receiving methotrexate. I remember where I was about to go to a work event, and I randomly started just bleeding like crazy. And I went to the bathroom, and it was very much so the passing of the pregnancy.
Right.
And I remember after that, it was almost like I didn't bleed again. Like, I just passed everything.
Yes.
I could see the little sack of cells.
Yeah. You know what it is. You're like, this isn't just a blood clot or something.
Yeah. You know what it is. And it is unexplainable. I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to experience that. And it's just very graphic. And
so you can't get that image out of your head.
No,
you can't. And with being pregnant now, I mean, I'm 27 weeks. I still look every time I like to use the bathroom or I check the toilet. I mean, especially in the beginning, of course, the anxiety is just, it's almost like you're just expecting it to not work out. You're expecting there to be pain at the end. And when I had to get my numbers drawn again, I was like, I'm so over these numbers, but I would be holding my breath, like shaking when the doctor called me with my numbers. Yeah. And I ended up going to a fertility clinic for this third time. And I knew that, you know, we were still like trying naturally and everything like that. But I was like, if there's anything I can be doing differently, I understand that we're just like kind of trying to disregard the ectopic I went through. But like, if there's any kind of test, if there's anything I can take. So those, they were very, very helpful there. And I don't know that going there is like the reason I conceived what seems to be a healthy pregnancy by any means, but I think it just really helped with my mindset. And they were so positive there. And the early scans and stuff like that, it's just different than an OB. They look for a lot of things. And so I just felt so much better with that. But when they would call me with my results, I was like, is that good? Like I was just, and they were kind of like giggling on the other end. They're like, yeah, that's really good. And I'm like, and I'd be celebrating with my coworkers because I told my good friends, coworkers, parents, like way early on with my current pregnancy. I'm like, I do not care to wait long. I said, it doesn't matter because if something does happen, I think it's just better for people to know so that you have the support.
Yes.
And my friends and family know everything that I've gone through. And if I have to go through something similar like that again, I'm going to be looking to lean on them anyway. So I told them pretty much right away, and they were equally as like holding their breath for me, but they're, you know, it just makes things more exciting knowing that things are going well now. But it's just, it's so traumatizing. It really just sticks with you.
It does stick with you. Yeah. So you let it slip that you're pregnant with your double rainbow baby.
Yes.
That's how we were going to end the podcast, or how I wanted to end the podcast. So congratulations. I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
So when did you find out you were pregnant?
Oh gosh. I found out in October of this last October. It was actually in between weddings. I had went out of town for a wedding the weekend before. It was too early to test or anything like that. And then I came home, had a wedding that weekend, took a test and was positive. So I ended up telling like a bunch of close girlfriends that were going to be at the wedding that weekend. I'm like, listen, it's just going to stress me out to pretend to not drink or do any of that. I'm pregnant. And they were so excited. But it just feels like, it's just funny because they've known for so long, it feels like.
Yeah.
But yeah, since October. So started going to the fertility clinic, and I got a couple like really early scans, placement scans, did the blood work. They like graduated me from the fertility clinic at like 9 weeks, I think it was. And which was great, but I was like, I kind of like coming here. This is very like, you just take really good care of me, and I feel so much reassurance coming here. But have been with my OB since, and yeah, I'm at like 27 weeks now. So
wow, you're in the home stretch.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been very exciting. It's just like you said, though, it's like always in the back of your mind, the stress of, you know, just being pregnant in general. People naturally always have worries about something going wrong. But yeah, I think as I'll be in the third trimester, I think next week. So it's a lot.
It's real. There's a baby in there. I remember thinking that my worries and fear started to decrease as soon as I reached a point in my pregnancy when I could feel my son kick.
Yes.
Because that is reassurance and peace right there.
Yes. I think I started feeling the baby like 19, 20 weeks. And you know, you're not really sure if it's kicks or flutters or if it's gas or what it is. But now I feel them like so much. So when I don't feel the baby, I'm like kind of pressing like, hello, wake up. But yeah, it's so cool. I mean, it's so crazy how our bodies transform. I think just being pregnant is so incredible. So I just give so much credit to all moms and anyone that has been pregnant before, because it's so cool.
It is. It's so cool. And babies are true blessings. They really are. There's so much work that goes into making a baby.
Yeah, it
So
really
much.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy how, you're taught your entire young adult and teen life that you have sex one time and you're going to get pregnant. They scare you in that sense. And then when it's finally time to try to conceive because you're ready and in a great place, loss happens. It can take years. It can take so much testing, so much money. All of the above. It's crazy.
I know. I've told my mom that a million times. I'm like, you always ingrained it in me, like, to not have sex or you have protection and all the things. And that, getting pregnant would be like the worst thing in the world. And maybe, I didn't want to be getting pregnant at a young age and not married and things like that. But if I would have known all the things that we were going to have to go through, I would have maybe started a little bit earlier or not been so. I'm not so worried about like the timing and planning of everything. I'm due in June and a lot of people are like, oh, what perfect timing. Like, did you plan that with both of us being off for the summer? And I'm like, so no, I didn't. But if it worked out, like it's going to work out. So but
amazing.
Exciting.
Yeah, so exciting. You have so many special things ahead of you.
Yes.
So
it's
many.
Definitely getting super surreal too. Like my husband's currently building furniture in the nursery. So we have some showers coming up and stuff. So it's just nice to finally be in a stage of excitement.
Yeah.
As much worry.
Yeah. I'm excited to see pictures from your showers and your announcement once you do have your baby. Do you know the gender?
Yes, it's a boy.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you.
I love being a boy mom.
Yeah, that's what every boy mom says. So I'm excited to be part of that club.
Yes, they love their mamas, which fills my heart. But they're just so sweet.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm excited. And when we found out, we didn't really know how, like, if we wanted to do any kind of reveal with just us or whatever. But I found out on like the online portal, we had done some testing and I was in bed and it just said male. And I'm like, oh, I guess this is it. But, like I'm just kind of over the big, like, excitement reveals and videos and all these things just because of everything that we've been through. I'm like, let's just keep it simple. I ran down, my husband was eating breakfast. I'm like, it's a boy. And he was very emotional, which he doesn't always show that side. And I'm like, it just felt so much more real too. The gender and everything. So
that's so sweet. Yes, it feels more real once you know what the gender is. And we were the same way. I think we were at my parents' house for the weekend and I got the email that the results were in. And my husband and I looked at each other and we're kind of like, let's go over to the room. And I let him know the results are in. Let's leave sooner rather than later so that we can look at them in the car.
Right.
I remember we left really quickly and my parents probably wondered why. And they had no idea. We weren't going to tell anyone. We wanted to keep it to ourselves, but we drove away and turned into a little parking lot in our neighborhood, opened the results, and I was happy with whatever gender, but I just always imagined having a boy for our first baby. And when I saw a male, I kid you not, I ugly cried like I've never ugly cried before. It just, in that moment, I felt like everything happened for a reason. Yes, the experience was traumatic and really hard, but I say this all the time, there's light at the end of that dark tunnel.
Yes. It takes a while to get there, but you can get there. Yes.
You can definitely get there.
And that's nice. You guys still had like a special moment, like even though it's just in your car in a parking lot or something, it's like, it's still so special. Like you'll never forget that moment and that feeling. you don't need to do things over the top, I realize. So you just never know what's going to happen. But
Yeah.
what really matters is that you're having a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby. So
Yes, that's all that matters.
yeah.
So to end this awesome conversation, what would you say was your best coping mechanism throughout both losses?
So after the first loss, I did start therapy, which my OB actually recommended. She was super concerned about my physical health, of course, but she just kept mentioning my mental health. And I really appreciated that, the fact that she was really thinking like that. And because at the time too, like, I know I'm feeling down, I know I'm feeling depressed, but I don't really know the extent of it. So she recommended someone that actually specialized in pregnancy loss and ectopic and just knew all the medical stuff. So sometimes when I would go to my therapist, I almost felt like it was a doctor's appointment, like I was learning a lot, which was kind of cool. And then it's just therapy on top of it. So that was super helpful. I think talking to someone is always helpful. And then in addition to that, just like leaning on the people that are closest to you. So your spouse, your friends, your family. I've had a really good support system, but just letting them know how you feel. And just, it could be like I would go through ups and downs of how I was feeling and it would be very random. But I think just talking to my husband about like, this is why I'm feeling this way. I'm really sad today. I'm really frustrated today. It helped him understand, because there were many times that he said, I see that you're upset. I'm upset too, but I didn't go through this physically. So it's hard for me to understand is basically how he felt. So just talking to them and leaning on them and just also advocating for yourself. I advocated for myself to go to the fertility clinic, to get some tests done, just to have conversations with doctors. Like I wasn't really going to accept the fact that like, well, these are two different things and your ectopic doesn't really count as a loss.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I'm not going to let this happen again. So what am I going to do? And doing the research and stuff. And I think too many women don't know like questions to ask, or they think that things are like the norm. So yeah, just advocating for yourself and talking about it. Talking about it helps me. Like this is therapeutic in a way. And
yeah,
it's while I'm trying to remain positive through my current pregnancy, it's nice to go back and like be able to reflect and process everything that I've been through. So
yeah, definitely. Those are great recommendations. And I agree. Sharing your stories and experiences is very therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
It's helpful for ourselves, but other people are also going to find it helpful.
Right. Yeah, because people don't know, much about it. And it's just nice to be able to educate people. And it doesn't need to be like a taboo thing that we just pretend didn't happen, because it did, and it's very real.
It did, and it changes our lives.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Molly, for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me on here. I appreciate it.
Of course. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.